back to Kansas City. And they did,
well, Curt,
which is quite amazing.
Curt, you're talking about family. You're talking about the family from single A ball all the way up to when they get to Royal Stadium. The one thing that people need to know about Curt's job, and he's not going to brag about it, that family starts a long ways ago. He gets them in the Hall of Fame. He is, George Brett calls up, hey, the grandkids are coming into town. George Jr.'s coming in. You need to this guy has a great relationship with those guys that started at the beginning of the family. He's the end of the family. What a job to have. What a job, Gary, to have.
It's great. And, as a Royals fan, it's fantastic because, they're all the guys that I grew up with, and they're all they all are interesting personalities, and to be able to interact with them, People always say, who's your favorite Royal? And that's hard for me.
It's like saying, who's your favorite kid, right?
Yeah, it's like, obviously George Brett is first among equals in a lot of ways in that particular front. I always explain that George Brett, so we go back to that 12-year-old me in 1980. George has been fantastic to me. Anytime I've ever asked him for something, and I try not to do it very often, it's like I only go to George for something if I really need it, and he always comes through and has been so gracious over the years that I've been with the Royals when I ask him to do so. But I always explain what's fun about that to me is to try to explain that is, so George Brett, the player inside is the 12-year-old inside of me is like George Brett is still a superhero.
Yeah.
And that person is still in my head somewhere. The guy that I see and talk to every now and then, that's George. Completely different guy, Yeah. It's like George Brett, the George Brett superhero still lives in my imagination, but I've been fortunate enough to be able to know him a little bit. And so I know George and Dennis Leonard is fantastic, especially the guys that live around here.
Frank White.
You see them. Frank is I love Frank and John Mayberry. Nobody tells stories like John Mayberry. I don't know if you guys have ever talked to John Mayberry, but if you haven't, if you've got about 4 hours, ask him one question and off to the races you go. And he's fantastic, so you guys should have him sometime. But he's a great storyteller. So just being around those guys, always fun. Always.
Well, Gary, guys, I'll remember what he just said about only going to George for certain times. I've always been afraid to ask Curt for tickets. Well, next time we want to go to the ball game, I'm going to ask Curt for some. I'm going to say I kind of feel like you and George. Well, hey, Curt, we want some tickets.
Yeah,
things can be worked out. Things can be worked out.
Maybe even take the studio mobile. Do something from the Hall of Fame there. No, but you mentioned George Brett. That's one of my favorite Royals. One of my other kind of favorite Royals, just from when I first moved to Kansas City because he was here, was Joe Randa. Two of his kids came through Shawnee Mission East High School. Where I coached at, so that kind of, I've met him in passing a couple times, and always just been super nice. Have you interacted with him very much?
Yeah, we're fortunate that the guys that are in Kansas City and that they're all good guys, and it's really amazing over the years to have that much, and I hope more guys would take advantage and move here because I think I'm biased. I think Kansas City is one of the great places in all the world. So I wish some of them would take more of that opportunity. Ian Kennedy lives here, and he's not from here, but I think he and his they have a whole group of kids, and I think Kansas City might end up being home for them no matter where their travels, baseball travels might take them in the future. That I think Kansas City might be. It's a great place. So the guys that are still here, and especially from that early era, there's still quite a few of them that live here in town.
And, actually, I talked to Jake, his oldest son, played football my first couple years at Shawnee Mission East. He was a junior and senior, and I still have a relationship with him. And so he's going to come on the show sometime too and just talk. He's in the Washington Nationals minor league system right now. Just got drafted by them this last draft. So, he's on his way up. And, he's a great kid, and so I'm excited to see him come up.
That should be fun. Should be fun. I'll have to keep an eye on him. I remember him as a little guy.
Yeah, probably a little guy.
He's probably not little anymore. I imagine.
No,
probably a little bit taller.
Yeah, he was a heck of an athlete, for us, and like I said, he played football for us at Shawnee Mission East, and obviously played baseball too. He was on the state championship team we had a few years ago, and great kid, and so that kind of deepened. Joe Randa was always kind of a guy I remembered seeing play. And then, to have the opportunity to coach his kids and, see them come through. And like I said, when I met him, great guy. And Dayton Moore's son currently is going to be a senior at Shawnee Mission East, Robert. Watched him play a few times last year, went to a few baseball games. What's your relationship like with Dayton? I mean, I know he's kind of more on the baseball side, with bringing in guys and everything, but what's your relationship like with him?
It's very good. That particular side of the organization is, those people are working so hard, and what's interesting is that group has been largely together for a long time, and it's really a family environment throughout the whole organization, really, but the baseball operations side and my interactions with when I have a chance to interact with the guys on the baseball ops side is always good, and they've given me the opportunity on several occasions to be able to talk to our minor leaguers and about Royals history and Kansas City baseball history and how they're really part of something that's really goes back almost a century and a half. It's like you're really part of something. You might not realize it, but let me tell you, you're part of something that's much deeper than you even understand. And so it's fun to be able to do that, and then sort of explain to them along the way. Once you get into professional baseball, from the Royals Hall of Fame perspective, is so of the players that are in the Royals Hall of Fame, we have guys that were first-round draft picks. We have guys that were 10th round draft picks. We have guys that were never drafted at all. So I try to impress upon them, it's like you have an opportunity inside of here, and just however you got here, you're here now, and take advantage of the opportunity as to the fullest extent that you can, and just so think about that on your way through, and also think about the people that you're working with along the way. I always try to talk to them about that, because as someone who works not in the baseball side but around the baseball club, is to try to impress upon some of those guys that to sort of build those relationships. There's so much of an opportunity at the minor league level that you can. Are you interested in broadcasting? Talk to the broadcasters. Are you interested in media? Talk to the media. Are you interested in business? Talk to the sponsorship people and the people that are running businesses in those towns you're in that are coming to the ballpark. Take advantage of the opportunities. You are given this platform of playing baseball, and you should take full advantage of that part of it, but also take advantage of this other part that's being laid out before you to be able to do those sorts of things. So.
Jeff Montgomery,
yes.
20 years with 810, one of the founders, Brian McRae, two Royals guys, so there's your perfect example.
There are
of
business opportunities, there's media opportunities, there's all kinds of things that you get interesting opportunities and are open to many different things by being a professional baseball player at all levels. Not just the major league level, and to keep that in mind as you progress. If you're fortunate enough to make it all the way to the big leagues, keep that in mind as you progress from single A, double A, triple A, Major League Baseball. It's all there. It's like you just have to take advantage of it.
Well, the neat thing is once players get past playing, they're more accessible. They're not as afraid to talk to people. I texted Jeff today, happy 20. We texted back and forth. Great guy, great people. Him and Brian, same way. I mean, but Curt, you get the special job of, I couldn't even imagine being Curt Nelson.
In this role, it's good. It's good. I don't know the rest, like my lawn and my house, not quite so good.
Tell Dad to to get out and get on the rider.
Yeah, I like what you said about, there's guys in the Royals Hall of Fame that were drafted first round, and, those first round guys are typically, going to be special players. But you've got guys that were never drafted and came up kind of the hard way. And, that's what I try to tell some of the young athletes I work with at the high school level is hard work pays off. You might not be the most talented right now, but if you work as hard as you can for those 4 years of high school, you're probably going to get an opportunity to play college football somewhere if you want to. And then if you work hard for that 4 or 5 years, who knows, if you'll get an opportunity to play professionally. But, you got to put in the hard work. And, I'm sure any of those guys that are in the Hall of Fame, I can't think of a name right now, but that were undrafted, I'm sure they'd tell you, I did it through hard work.
Yeah.
I worked harder than that other guy.
That's the way it went. And take advantage of opportunity. That's what I've always taken, take advantage of opportunity. Be mindful of those sorts of things that are coming your way by being able to do this special thing and play professional baseball. So
hey, I'd like to throw up a few pictures of Ned Yost's last day as a skipper and kind of let Curt go through memory lane. Tell us a little bit about how the last day was. We'll actually start with not the best picture, which is going to be the last picture of his day there, and that was, next to the last picture. The last picture will be very special, and Curt will be able to explain it too. But the press conference after the game.
Well, Ned had
How do you
Ned
do
had
a
an
press
interesting
conference?
relationship with the media.
Yes, he did.
So I will say this: I don't know Ned that well. Once again, another guy that was always gracious to me, and I got a chance to I ran into him he and his wife Deborah in the parking lot yesterday as I was going into work, and we talked there for a second and talked about moving, talked about mundane things like moving. He physically has to move his stuff from his apartment here in Kansas City, which he has left here. He said, usually after the season he just locks up his apartment and goes back, and then when he comes back all the stuff is there, but now he's got to pack up all that stuff and go. But he had that interesting relationship with the media, and the fact that if you didn't know Ned, you would think that he was sort of being sort of crusty or mean to the media. He had a sort of a repartee with them, which
he's a science guy,
which was more, he wasn't always being as mean as sometimes the words sounded like. He was more playing with them, and they were playing along with him. And there of course he's acknowledging the fans, which he got several times on Sunday, which was great. From he took the lineup card and then came back to the dugout and got a standing O, and then we mentioned about him in the middle of the game and got another standing O, and then of course with walk-off win, which was beautiful and perfect way to round it out. The fifth time in Royals history we've ended a home season with a walk-off win, and the first time ever we had ended the season, the last game of the season, with a walk-off win, and as the baseball gods let that happen on the day that Ned Yost's last game. So there he would be talking to the
great picture with
fans.
the helmet, as you said earlier.
Yeah, that's a cool shot right there.
The one thing, my favorite thing about that is Joel sort of mentioned in this. So he was asking Ned several questions, and he was going along, and then Ned started talking about the fans, and Ned sort of walked away, sort of ended the interview on that one. And it was really because it looked like he was going to get a little emotional, and he decided that was probably where he wanted to leave it, was his last thing, thanking the fans about and letting them know how special his time in Kansas City was.
Last picture here, and this is very special.
Yeah,
and
so
this is, it's almost drawing tears to my eyes because
that's
Sarah Olson,
police officer in Kansas City that's fighting ALS. And
this is after his last game.
This is after
his
the
office.
last game. They got to go down. Ned had they had known each other before, but this was an opportunity for her to and him to share a special moment after his last game. And
this shows
and
he does have a heart.
His support for her, and he supports many things in Kansas City and back home in Georgia. So He's over the course of the last 5 years, it's been great because I think his perception in Kansas City has changed a little bit of him, and he's an all around if I can use the term good dude. He's a good dude, and certainly